Let me tell you something. The right to remain silent is one of the most misunderstood constitutional protections in American law. People think they know it, they've heard it on television 1,000 times, but when they're actually standing face to face with a police officer, that's when the confusion becomes dangerous. Today we're going to examine a police encounter that raises fundamental questions about how far officers can push when a citizen exercises their Fifth Amendment rights. We're talking about the intersection of reasonable suspicion and stalking allegations, and whether refusing to answer questions can be held against you. I've studied these cases for years, and I can tell you, the law here is not what most people think it is. There are nuances that courts have wrestled with repeatedly, and getting this wrong can cost someone their freedom. If you want to actually understand your rights, not the television version, but the real constitutional framework, subscribe now. Let's break this down together.
Can we have a safety backup, please?
I gave them a call now, see if I can, and I will head over there, okay?
10-4, thank you. Hey, Dylan.
Yep.
Hi.
So, I've been being gang stalked,
Okay.
okay? Started with that house right there.
I'm gonna get out of the sun. Concerned about this house?
No, it's... So, Chief gave my personal information about 18 months ago,
Okay.
okay? The guy came over and started chewing me out because I drove for a female situation 1 block to the dollar store, okay?
Okay.
I trespassed him with craning,
Okay.
okay? He has been going to different places and starting stuff anywhere he can, like catching rabbits he thinks are mine because I feed stray animals. Okay, that includes cats. It includes squirrels. I don't care. They're hungry. Okay. Apparently, he's been going around the neighborhood showing off the animals he's catching that he thinks are mine. The guy has a sick obsession with me. I'm gonna go get a RO, I think. Now this guy down here, he's been driving up and down my street. He's one of his friends, and
Is he driving or is he on that bike?
bike. He's on that bike, and he's like taking pictures of me, going, "I'm gonna post it on social media."
Okay.
So we have another stalker. But this guy right here, if he intends to dox me in the neighborhood I live in, or the town I live in, that's illegal. So its intent is to cause emotional distress. I'm already living next to asshole 1 and asshole 2 and asshole 3.
Okay.
So I need you, pretty please, to go down there. I think he might have dumped that bike and bailed, because I think he thought I was kidding when I said I'm going to call the cops.
Yeah, well, I see someone on the corner over there with the bike,
Okay, well, that's him.
sitting on a bike. Is
And
that
he's
him?
laughing.
He has like man bun?
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah. I'd advise ISP to make contact with the male, and I'll head over and make contact with him.
Is he still there?
Yeah, he's over there.
I'm sure he's going to start some shit.
Maybe. Gotcha. I'm gonna go over there with him. J3 out with 940. Hi.
What's up?
What are we up to?
Out and about?
Okay. Did you pass by that residence over there?
Of course, I have a friend that lives down there.
Okay. Who's your friend?
I don't have to answer any of your questions.
At this time you do, because you're a suspect.
Actually,
you're a
I have a
suspect
Fifth
of
Amendment right
That's not a Fifth Amendment right.
to not to answer questions to cops.
Yeah.
Are you?
You're not under arrest.
You actually believe that, don't you?
Huh?
You actually believe that, don't you?
Okay.
I legally do not have to answer any of your questions, sir.
Well, at this point you're detained, so you do. Because you're a suspect of a stalking.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm just simply asking questions, and we'll go from there. You'll go about your day, I'll go about my day. Let's just make it easy, man.
Okay.
Okay. Who's your friend that was over there?
I plead the Fifth.
Plead the Fifth. Okay. What's your name?
I plead the Fifth.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. Did you catch what just happened there? Officer Delgo tells this man, "At this time you do have to answer questions," because he's a suspect. And then he says, "You're not under arrest," as if that settles it. That is a fundamental misstatement of the law. The Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination does not evaporate simply because you haven't been arrested yet. In Salinas v. Texas, the Supreme Court in 2013 did create some complexity around pre-arrest silence, but it absolutely did not establish that suspects must answer questions during a detention. Now here's what's interesting about this encounter. The woman making the complaint is describing what she calls gang stalking. She's pointing at multiple houses and talking about neighbors catching animals and someone on a bike taking photos of her. Officer Delgo has to evaluate whether any of this rises to the level of criminal stalking under Idaho Code Section 18-7905. But watch what happens when he approaches Braden. He immediately escalates to "you're detained" and "you're a suspect of stalking," based entirely on this woman's account. No independent investigation, no corroboration. Just her word transforms this man into someone who supposedly must answer questions. That's not how reasonable suspicion works.
So you do have to identify yourself when
Not
being
correct.
requested. Okay. Now you do have to.
Absent reasonable
You don't-
suspicion?
No,
Or
he has-
reasonable,
no,
articulable suspicion?
So he does have reasonable articulable suspicion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a restraining order against him? Or anything like that?
But no, she wants to get one.
Oh, she
so
wants
that's
to
why
get
she
one?
wants to get him identified so she can go to the
Okay.
courthouse and
Oh, okay.
go about that.
Okay.
So she's not even going to press charges. She just wants to get a protection order. That's it.
She can't press charges. I didn't do anything.
Can she come down here and identify him?
She identified him from over there.
Oh, well, there
Yep.
you go.
She described a man bun, guy on a bike.
Okay. Riding on a public street,
Yeah.
taking pictures.
Okay.
I'm still not seeing anything illegal there.
So you were taking pictures? Is that what you said?
Sure.
Of her?
I needed to post on a public page on Facebook
Well, where was she when you took the pictures?
on her property.
Then she has reasonable expectation of privacy.
No, she doesn't.
Where was she at on her property?
In front of her front door, in plain view.
In plain view? So I just want to make sure I understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You seem like a savvy guy. Don't want to pull anything fast over you. Okay?
For sure.
I make a mistake, you call me out on it. Good. Right? Because I don't want my constitutional rights infringed upon either. Of
course.
I'm riding uniform.
Right.
So you drove by this individual's house, or rode on your. Okay.
Fair enough.
Regardless of the public roadway and stuff like that, we get it. You didn't trespass.
Right.
Okay, you did all that right. You saw her standing in front of her door on her property, and you felt the urge to take pictures of her.
I've been meaning to for a while, so
Okay.
I'm trying to blacklist her
You're trying to blacklist her.
from a certain industry. Yeah,
Okay. So, and then you want to post those pictures?
of course.
Okay. And what's the intent of posting those pictures?
Blacklisting.
Blacklisting. And what does she need to be blacklisted from?
Purchasing rabbits.
Purchasing rabbits.
Yes.
Okay. So, like, are you thinking like a community page like
Yes.
Craigslist or something like that,
Something
or
like
Facebook
that.
Marketplace?
Something like that.
Okay, cool. So your intent is to take pictures of her, say, everybody, don't let this lady buy rabbits from you. Is she harming them in any way?
Not directly.
Okay.
Domestic rabbits are not meant to be roaming free.
Oh, so she's taking like a pet and then like setting it free?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right.
So, let's see, when was it? Not within like last 2-ish weeks. I've been helping basically everybody on the street catch the loose rabbits.
Okay, cool.
I caught 9 in 6 days.
What kind of rabbits are they?
A mixture between, I think some had silver fox, had the looks of silver fox. Some were obviously Flemish giant.
Okay.
Some had the look like they had Rex mixed in there.
Okay. So, how'd you find out that she was doing all this?
Facebook.
Oh, really? So she's
Yeah,
like,
it's been a huge problem for 3 years.
no kidding. Okay. Is this your first time taking pictures of her?
Yeah.
Okay. First time passing by her house?
Not passing by her house because I go to my friends.
Okay. I'm just going to take your word for it
Okay.
that you got a friend over there.
Okay.
she wants a restraining order against you.
Okay.
She's already identified you. Does she
Okay.
know your name?
No.
Okay. So you're not under arrest. Like he said. That's all she wants to do is just say, hey, I don't want him coming over here within maybe, what is it, typically like 300 feet? 300 feet and taking pictures of me. I find that reasonable.
Okay.
I don't know if you do, but you did get the information you need, and you did get the information you need to blacklist
I
her.
won't be taking pictures of her again.
I love that.
Okay.
I do love that. She still has the right, just like you do, to file a complaint and file a protection order.
Protection.
Okay, a protection order. Not a restraining order, but a protection order. Are you cool with that?
Not if it means giving up my Fourth Amendment rights.
What's your Fourth Amendment right now?
To stay, what's the word, secure my papers and effects.
Okay, good.
Now this is where it gets fascinating from a legal standpoint. Braden starts talking about Fourth Amendment rights, and the officer actually engages with him on the substance. That's rare to see in these encounters. But here's what Braden gets wrong. He invokes his Fourth Amendment right to be secure in his papers and effects, as if identification itself is protected property. The Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. It doesn't create a blanket shield against identifying yourself during a lawful investigatory stop. Under Hybel versus 6th Judicial District Court from 2004, the Supreme Court held that states can require suspects to identify themselves during a Terry stop without violating the Fourth or Fifth Amendments. Nevada had a stop and identify statute. Idaho actually has one too. Idaho Code Section 49316 requires drivers to present identification upon request. Now here's the wrinkle. Braden wasn't driving when they stopped him. He was on a bicycle on a public roadway. So the question becomes whether Idaho's pedestrian identification requirements apply and whether reasonable suspicion even existed in the first place. The officers are threading a needle here. They want identification to help this woman get a protection order, but they're dancing around whether they actually have legal authority to compel it. And Braden, despite some confusion about which amendment protects what, is essentially correct that he doesn't have to provide papers just because someone wants to file paperwork against him.
That's fine. Name, date of birth.
That still falls within papers and effects.
Well, if you give it to us, that's why we're saying consent, right? This is going to be their case anyway. It just makes it easier. I don't know how your policy goes on what he does, but I think you've been very reasonable. I think you're passionate about it. I love the fact that you explained it to us. To me, that dispels any kind of major suspicion that you're just some guy. When I see, are you married?
I am.
So it dispels any suspicion for me that you're like this married dude that's going along taking pictures of women next to their doorstep and things like that.
For sure.
I like that. You're trying to save animals? I'm good with that. In fact, I have a dog that you could, if you wanted a dog, because my wife's incredibly allergic to them.
Not on the size of property I have.
Okay, gotcha. I understand that. So, but anyway, that's what we're here for. When I pulled up, what were you doing here?
I assumed you guys would like to speak with me.
Okay.
And so I figured I would give you the courtesy.
I'll do that.
I have nothing against law enforcement. The only time I have anything against law enforcement is if you violate rights or break laws yourself.
I'm down with that.
Yeah.
I'm not a thin blue line guy. If a cop does something, like, I have no problem arresting. One time my sergeant actually said, would you like to go arrest a marshal? He's dealing drugs out of his patrol vehicle. And I was like, send me at him. I got no problem doing any of that. None at all. So I don't want to infringe upon your rights. I do, and I'll go double check this, but the reasonable suspicion of you stalking is that you are going there taking pictures of her while she's on her property outside her door. So that's the reasonable articulable suspicion of possible stalking. There's suspicion that you are stalking her when you do that. Do you know what I mean?
That's fair, but you said possible, so that...
Right, but that's the reasonable suspicion, right? It's reasonable. I believe, so like, if I'm at a bank and I see a guy take out a rifle and sling it over his shoulder, not a violation of any law. He can do that. If he puts on a mask, still not a violation of any law.
For sure.
However, I can articulate that this guy's probably going to go do something crazy in that bank, and I'm going to intercept him. And I'm going to talk to him. I will detain him until I can figure out whether or not.
For sure.
So that is where we're at with the reasonable suspicion. You did everything right, public roadway, all that stuff, but then you took pictures of her.
For sure.
The officer just made a critical admission right there. He said possible stalking, and then acknowledged this is about reasonable suspicion, not probable cause. That distinction matters enormously. What fascinates me is the bank robbery analogy he used. A man with a rifle and a mask in a bank. That's his comparison to photographing someone from a public roadway? Those two scenarios are not remotely equivalent in terms of articulable criminal threat. The Supreme Court in Terry v. Ohio required that reasonable suspicion be based on specific, articulable facts suggesting criminal activity is afoot. Taking photographs in public, even photographs someone finds uncomfortable, does not inherently suggest the crime of stalking under Idaho law. Idaho Code 1879-05 requires a course of conduct that would cause a reasonable person to feel frightened, alarmed, or distressed. A single instance of photography from a public space does not establish a course of conduct. That's a pattern requirement. The officer seems to conflate the woman's discomfort with the legal elements of the crime itself. But here's what I'll give the officer credit for. He's being remarkably transparent about his reasoning. He's not hiding behind authority. He's actually engaging with Braden on the legal framework, even if his analysis has some holes in it. That's better policing than we usually see.
How many pictures did you take?
One. Well,
Was it like a burst?
technically it was a video because I was riding past and I didn't want to stop.
Okay. Were you just like
Pretty much.
this?
Yes.
Did she say anything to you?
She asked if she wanted me to pose, or if I wanted her to pose.
Pose?
Pose. So essentially, she was accepting the photos. So. So that kind of dispels that.
Yeah, no, see, this is why we have these conversations,
For sure.
man, because it helps us to know exactly what we need.
For sure.
Let me go look up a couple codes real quick to make sure that I'm squared away on everything. If I find a code, though, that says that based upon reasonable articulable suspicion, you have to identify yourself for these purposes, I'll explain that whole entire code to you.
Okay.
And then, but yeah, I'm gonna leave this up to the man.
Okay.
So I'll be right back. Okay.
If you do decide to pursue it, I would like a supervisor, please.
I don't have a supervisor. I'm
Sure
sure
you do.
I don't.
Are you like are you a supervisor?
No, I'm the only unit on for the city. So yeah, so don't think that I'm like trying to harass or anything. I'm just trying to
I know.
get everything squared away
But
and stuff
I would
like
hate-
that. So
I really would hate to have to file a lawsuit over Fourth Amendment.
yeah.
I really would.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm here on this street to do.
For sure. And that's why we had the discussion
For sure.
when we're on the same page now, right?
For sure.
Because I come over here hearing her side, but you also have a side to the story.
For sure.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to get everything together and
For
go
sure.
from there. So you can go ahead and check that out, and then I'll talk to my partner real quick. Because yeah, I don't think that she wants to press any charges or anything like that. The only comment that she made is that she wanted to get a protection order against him.
She's gonna have to go to court for that, though.
For what? For the protection order? Yeah, she has to go to a court and fill it out and state why she wants to get the protection order filled out against him.
Well,
Hi, Barbara. This is Trooper Roberts from the State Police. How are you?
okay, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Hey, I was wondering if you knew the name of that individual.
I do not. I think he's Brenda.
Well, do you have any messages with him at all? Have you been in communication with him?
I don't know.
You don't know if you've spoken to him like via Facebook Messenger, text? What's that?
I can't hear you.
You don't know if you've spoken to him like through Messenger or text message or anything like that?
Nope, I have no idea.
Okay. All right. The reason I'm asking, it just makes it harder to identify him. So.
You should be able to identify him. I went to police academy 30 years ago, sir. You can identify him based on the fact that he's harassing me in my own yard.
Okay, so I appreciate that you went through the academy 30 years ago, but things have changed completely since then.
You have probable cause.
So we don't have probable cause, and if we have a misdemeanor that's not committed in our presence, we can't arrest anyway. So
I'm not asking you to
so
arrest. I'm asking you to identify.
So we're working on identifying him right now. Okay. So I was just calling you to see if you had any messages or anything like that. Where did you serve?
It doesn't matter. All I'm asking you to do is do your job and identify him so that there's a record of his
stalking me.
Okay, that sounds good.
Alright, what's your badge number, please?
4091.
Thank you. Have a good night. Be safe.
You too, thank you. Alright, dude. You said you have messages with her?
I do.
Okay, so
She initiated them.
okay, that's fine. She says that she doesn't know if she does. I looked at codes. You know, a lot of it's, if I pull somebody over, driver,
Of course,
they have
yes.
to. You're a pedestrian. It's a different story.
Yeah, and Idaho does not have an official stop and ID law.
They don't.
Oh,
No, they don't.
So,
My reasonable suspicion at this point is just dispelled.
okay.
I think, honestly, you went over there. Before it wasn't, dude. I'm going to be honest, okay?
Right.
Before it wasn't.
And I do apologize if I came off as like a hard ass for.
You're fine, dude. You're fine. But
I'm
I'm
a constitutionalist, so.
Good. That's what I'm registered as.
Yeah.
And there it is, right there at the end. The officer says, Idaho does not have an official stop and ID law, and then he says, my reasonable suspicion at this point is just dispelled. That is a law enforcement officer doing something we rarely see. He checked the law, he applied it correctly, and he admitted when his initial basis for the encounter no longer held up. This entire interaction just became a case study in how these encounters should work when both sides understand the Constitution. Let's pull back and look at what we actually witnessed here. We had an officer who came in hot with a detention based on one person's complaint. He made some early mistakes. He overstated the identification requirements. He conflated discomfort with criminal conduct. But then something remarkable happened. He went back to the vehicle and actually looked up the relevant codes. He came back and acknowledged that as a pedestrian in Idaho, Braden had no legal obligation to identify himself absent a stop and ID statute. And Braden, this man stood his ground without becoming hostile. He invoked his rights clearly. He explained his position. He even said, I really would hate to have to file a lawsuit over Fourth Amendment, which is exactly the kind of measured response that keeps these situations from escalating while still asserting constitutional protections. The phone call with the woman revealed something important too. She couldn't confirm any prior communication. She couldn't identify him. The course of conduct required under Idaho Code 1879-05 simply wasn't there. One video taken from a public roadway where the subject allegedly asked if he wanted her to pose, that's not stalking under any reasonable interpretation of the statute. Here's what I want you to take away from this entire encounter. The law protects both sides when applied correctly. It protects citizens from arbitrary detention and compelled self-incrimination. It protects officers who conduct themselves within constitutional boundaries from liability. When the officer said, I'm a constitutionalist at the end, that's exactly the mindset we need more of in American policing. But I also want to be clear about something. This outcome was not guaranteed. Braden's knowledge of his rights made this possible. His calm demeanor made it possible. A different citizen who didn't know they could decline to answer questions might have felt compelled to comply with demands that had no legal basis. The Fourth Amendment exists precisely because the founders understood that government power unchecked becomes government power abused. Terry v. Ohio gave officers the ability to conduct investigatory stops, but it came with guardrails. Reasonable articulable suspicion. Limited scope. And those guardrails only work when citizens know they exist. So what do you do if you find yourself in Braden's position? First, you stay calm. Escalation helps no one. Second, you clearly invoke your rights. I'm exercising my right to remain silent is a complete sentence. Third, you ask the specific question. Am I being detained or am I free to go? That forces the officer to articulate their legal basis. And fourth, you document everything you can. The officer here ultimately did his job. He investigated a complaint, he realized the facts didn't support the allegations, and he let Braden go. That's not failure. That's the system working. But it only worked because someone knew their rights well enough to exercise them. That's why this channel exists. That's why we break down these encounters frame by frame with the law open in front of us. Because an informed citizenry is the only real check on power. Tell me your name and where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments. And if this video helped you understand your rights better, share it with someone who needs to see it. Knowledge is protection. Stay informed, stay constitutional, and I'll see you in the next one.